What if I told you that one small habit you repeat every single morning, almost without thinking, could be quietly working against you after the age of 60? Yeah, I know, that sounds a little dramatic, maybe even hard to believe, but stay with me for a second, because this isn't coming from some random blog or trend on the internet. This is something surgeons, people who literally see what's happening inside the human body, have started warning about more and more. And the truth is, it's not loud, it's not obvious. It doesn't hit you like a sudden illness or injury. No, it's slow, subtle, almost invisible at first. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous, because you don't feel it building up until one day something just feels off, and you can't quite explain it. Maybe it starts as a little fatigue or brain fog that wasn't there before. Maybe your joints ache in a weird way, or your energy just doesn't come back like it used to. And you brush it off, right? You tell yourself, well, I'm getting older. But what if it's not just aging? What if it's something you're putting into your body every single day, thinking it's helping you? Something you probably trust, maybe even rely on. And yeah, I'm talking about vitamins, because here's the thing nobody really sits you down and explains. Especially after 60, your body doesn't process things the same way anymore. It just doesn't. Your metabolism slows, your organs don't filter as efficiently. And what used to pass through your system easily can start sticking around longer than it should, building up quietly over time. And when that happens, even something considered healthy can turn into a problem. Not overnight, not in a dramatic way, but gradually. Like a glass filling up drop by drop until it spills. And you didn't even notice it getting close to the edge. And there was this man, mid-70s. Not someone reckless or careless, actually the opposite. He was the kind of guy who tried to do everything right, ate reasonably well, stayed active when he could, kept a routine. And every morning he'd take his vitamins. Same ones he'd been taking for years, maybe even decades. Because somewhere along the way, he picked up the idea that vitamins equal health. More vitamins equal better health. And honestly, who could blame him? That's what we're told over and over again. Ads, articles, even well-meaning friends. It becomes this unquestioned truth, so he kept taking them, never really thinking twice about it. Until things started changing. Small things at first. Things you could easily ignore, like feeling unusually tired even after a good night's sleep. Moments where he'd forget something simple, or feel a little off balance, nothing dramatic. Just enough to make him uneasy. And when he finally went to the doctor, they ran tests, basic ones at first, then more detailed ones, and nothing obvious showed up. No major disease, no clear explanation. And that's where it gets frustrating. Because when there's no clear answer, people start blaming age again. This is just how it is now. But one specialist, a surgeon who had seen similar patterns before, decided to look deeper, not just at symptoms, but at habits, daily routines, everything the man was putting into his body. And that's when the question came up, simple but powerful. What supplements are you taking? And at first, it didn't seem important. Just a list of common vitamins, things you'd see in any store. Nothing unusual, but when they looked closer, when they measured levels in the body, something stood out. One vitamin was way higher than it should be, not just slightly elevated, but enough to start affecting how the body functioned. And here's the part that really hits. The man wasn't doing anything wrong in the way we usually think about it. He wasn't abusing medication. He wasn't ignoring his health. He was trying to take care of himself. But the problem was, his body had changed and his routine hadn't. He was still taking the same amounts his younger body could handle. Without realizing that now, after 60, his system couldn't clear it out the same way, so it stayed, accumulated, slowly interfering with processes that needed balance to work properly. And when he stopped that vitamin, just stopped it, nothing extreme. No complicated treatment, things began to shift. Not instantly, not like flipping a switch. But gradually, the fatigue lifted a little. The fog cleared. His body started finding its rhythm again. And that's when it really sinks in. Sometimes it's not about adding more to fix a problem. Sometimes it's about removing what no longer belongs. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. Because we're conditioned to think more is better. More supplements, more solutions, more support for the body. But after a certain point, especially as you get older, more becomes noise, more becomes pressure. More becomes something your body has to deal with instead of benefit from. And nobody really explains that transition. There's no moment where someone says, hey, what worked at 40 might not work at 60. So people just keep going. Same habits, same doses, same assumptions, and slowly, without realizing it, they create imbalances. Not because they don't care, but because they care enough to try, just without the right information. And look, this isn't about scaring you into throwing everything away. It's not about saying vitamins are bad, because they're not. They have a place. They can be helpful when used correctly. When there's an actual need, a real deficiency, guidance from someone who understands your specific situation. But blind use, routine without reflection, that's where problems begin. And it's uncomfortable to admit that something you believed was helping you might actually be holding you back, or even hurting you in small ways you didn't connect before. But that discomfort is important because it opens the door to awareness. And awareness is what allows you to make better decisions moving forward. Not based on fear, but based on understanding. And if you're being honest with yourself right now, you might already be thinking about your own routine. The bottles on your shelf, the pills you take without thinking twice. And maybe, just maybe, you're starting to wonder, do I actually need all of these? And that question right there, that moment of pause, that's where change begins. Not with panic, not with extremes, just with a simple, honest look at what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because your body, especially after 60, doesn't need guesswork. It needs intention. It needs balance. And it needs you to pay attention in a way most people never really learn to do. And the truth is, once you start paying attention, really paying attention, things begin to look different. You notice patterns you ignored before, like how some days you feel heavier for no clear reason, or how your energy dips at strange times, or how your mind just doesn't feel as sharp as it used to. And yeah, aging plays a role, no one's denying that. But not everything can be blamed on age. Sometimes it's the accumulation of small, unnoticed habits stacking up over time. And supplements, especially the ones we take without guidance, are a big part of that story. Because here's what most people don't realize. Not all vitamins behave the same way in the body. Some dissolve in water and leave relatively quickly. But others, the fat-soluble ones, they linger. They store themselves in your tissues, your liver, places that don't just flush things out overnight. And when you keep adding more of those day after day, week after week, year after year, it's not just extra. It becomes a burden your body has to manage. And after 60, when your internal systems are already working a little slower, that burden can turn into strain, and strain over time becomes dysfunction. Not always dramatic, not always obvious, but real. And what makes it even more complicated is how normalized supplement culture has become. It's everywhere. You walk into a store and there's an entire wall of promises. Better energy, stronger bones, sharper memory, longer life. It's almost overwhelming. And each bottle makes it sound like the missing piece you didn't know you needed. So people stack them, one for this, one for that, just in case, just to be safe. But just in case can quietly turn into too much and nobody really stops you. There's no alarm that goes off when you cross that invisible line. Your body just keeps adapting until it can't anymore. And then it starts sending signals, subtle at first, easy to dismiss, until they become harder to ignore. And by then, you're not thinking about vitamins as the cause. You're looking for something bigger, something more serious, when sometimes the answer is sitting right there in your daily routine. And I think that's what makes this so important to talk about. Because it's not about one specific vitamin being bad. It's about the relationship we have with them. The assumption that they're always harmless, always beneficial, no matter the context. And that assumption can lead to decisions that don't match what your body actually needs at this stage of life. And look, I get it. There's comfort in routine, in doing something that feels proactive, something that makes you feel like you're taking control of your health. Especially as you get older and things start to feel less predictable. But real control doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing what's appropriate, what's necessary, what's actually aligned with your body as it is now, not as it was 20 years ago. And that requires a shift, a small but powerful shift from automatic habits to intentional choices. From this is what I've always done, to this is what makes sense for me now. And yeah, that might mean questioning things you've trusted for years. It might mean having conversations with professionals, getting tests, looking at your actual levels instead of guessing, and maybe even letting go of certain supplements you thought you needed. And that can feel strange at first, almost like you're doing less for your health. But in reality, you might be doing exactly what your body has been asking for all along, reducing the load, giving it space to function without unnecessary interference. And there's something almost ironic about it. The idea that taking away something can sometimes bring you closer to feeling better, clearer, more like yourself again. And it's not a dramatic transformation, not the kind you see in before and after ads. It's quieter than that, more subtle. Like waking up and realizing you feel just a little more steady, a little more present, a little more right. And those small improvements add up. They create a sense of stability that's easy to overlook, but incredibly valuable, especially as you move through your 60s and beyond. And maybe the biggest takeaway here, the thing that really matters, is this simple idea that your body isn't static. It changes, it adapts, and what it needs changes with it. So the habits that support it have to evolve too. They can't stay frozen in time while everything else moves forward. And when you start to see it that way, when you stop treating your health like a fixed formula and start treating it like an ongoing conversation with your body, things shift. Your decisions become more thoughtful, more grounded, less driven by fear or marketing or assumptions, and more by actual understanding. And that's where real confidence comes from. Not from taking a dozen different things hoping something works, but from knowing why you're doing what you're doing and trusting that it makes sense for you right now in this stage of your life. And if there's one thing worth doing after hearing all of this, it's not to panic, not to throw everything out, but to pause. Just pause for a moment the next time you reach for those bottles and ask yourself a couple of honest questions. Do I truly need this? Has this been recommended based on my actual health? Or am I just continuing a habit I never really questioned? And those questions might seem small, but they have the power to change everything, because they bring awareness into a space that's been running on autopilot for far too long. And once you see that clearly, you can't really unsee it. You start making choices that reflect where you are now, not where you used to be. And that, more than anything, is what protects your health in the long run. Not more pills, not more promises. Just better awareness, better decisions, and the willingness to adjust when your body asks you to, even if it's in a quiet way you almost missed at first. And if you've made it this far, really think about it. Don't just move on to the next thing. Take a second, look at your routine. Maybe even talk to someone you trust about it. Because sometimes the smartest thing you can do for your health is less, not more.